to help people in every one of these areas and lands, those agnostics and atheists make fun of us and say, well, why don't you just pray to your God and it'll go away? So the question does arise, and the fact of the matter, even us Muslims who believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, and we believe in all that the Quran says, still this question sometimes crosses our mind. But why? Why is this happening? I mean, in the end of the day, there's so much. Today it's the Rohingya. Yesterday it was Syria. Tomorrow it's going to be another land. The day before yesterday was Kashmir. As for Palestine, that since I was born and before I was born for decades, the same Palestinian crisis. If one crisis finishes, another one starts. Every time we think we've seen one, another one pops up with the same images. How many images have all of us seen of starving kids, of widowed mothers, of orphans? How many times have we come and donated for this project and that issue and this calamity and that disaster? So Shaitan comes to us and says, for how long? For how long are you going to continue to give and give and give? And what is the point? And Shaitan comes and asks even more difficult questions. How do you explain this pain and suffering? Are we not the ummah of Izzah? Are we not the ummah of Allah and His Messenger? Are we not the ummah of the Quran? So what is happening here? So to answer that question, time is limited of course, I'm going to condense some points. I wanted to address that issue in this particular talk of mine. And realize, by the way, that this notion of trying to reconcile an all-powerful God with the existence of evil, right? How do you reconcile an all-powerful God with suffering and pain? An all-merciful God with calamities? How do you reconcile that? This notion has been discussed for the last 5,000 years of human history. From the times of the pre-Socratic philosophers, every theologian, every rabbi, every priest in the Middle Ages, every intellectual thinker has attempted to bring some type of solution. So many ulama of our own tradition have attempted to reconcile this. So do not think that in 20 minutes I will, mashallah, tabarakallah, single-handedly solve all of those issues. You can write many hundreds of volumes of the attempts of humanity to reconcile belief in God with the existence of pain and suffering. It's not something that is simplistic to do. But what we're going to try to do is to begin the answers and just to make your mind start thinking, inshallah ta'ala. Let me begin by telling you straight up, there is no simple, waterproof, absolutely foolproof answer that can satisfy any human being. Why? Because, let's look at the Quran. When Allah announced to the creation that He's about to create a new creation called Adam, when Allah announced to the creation, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, when Allah announced to the angels and to the jinn and to the other creation, wherever else was there, we don't know. Allah said to them, there's a new model that's going to be coming down to earth. These are the specifications of the model. This is what the new creation is going to do. What was the first question that the angels asked? Why? Why would you do that, O Allah? Why would you create a new creation that is going to kill and cause pain and inflict suffering? قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء. Why would you do that, O Allah? The same question about the existence of evil was asked even before the existence of evil. Are you guys following me there? The same question about why would you do something like this, O Allah, when men are going to kill other men, when they're going to go to war, when they're going to cause disasters and holocausts and this and that. Why would you do that? And here we are, perfect, peaceful, worshipping you, no pain, no suffering, no murder. Why would you do that? So the question of trying to understand evil is not just something that we are grappling with. Even the angels grapple with it. Now here's the point. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala respond to the angels? Did He give them a philosophically sound, watertight answer that completely satisfied their intellectual curiosity? What did He say? What did He say, everybody?
You don't know what I am.
Excellent. إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This is an answer that is not philosophical. It is iman based. You guys listening to that?
Yeah.
The answer to this question, the same question was asked by the angels. Allah did not say, oh, let me try to explain to you. No, He didn't. Why not? Because even the angels, who are in some ways more intelligent than us, and definitely more pure than us, definitely more pious than us, even the angels would not be able to understand why. So Allah told them, you're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to trust that I know what you don't know, and I understand what you do not understand. And so we begin to answer the question by stating the basic response, which is, the question cannot be answered fully. That's how we begin to answer the question. We begin to answer the question by saying there is no definitive answer that will satisfy the mind at a simple level. Because, and it's obvious why, because Allah's knowledge is infinite and our knowledge is finite. Allah's wisdom is beyond what we can understand. And here's the point, brothers and sisters. When atheists reject God, when Sam Harris says, why would a God allow this pain and suffering? When Bill Maher makes fun of God every single HBO episode, every second episode, he's mocking religion. And he's talking about, oh, look at these people and why don't they pray to their God to remove their suffering? It's not as if rejecting God has given them the answer to the existence of evil. You see, by rejecting God, they have created even more theological and philosophical problems. It's not as if they have an answer. Just because they could not answer one question, they ended up rejecting God, and they created an infinite long series of questions. Why are we here? Who created us? What is the purpose of life? What is the meaning of death? What's going to happen after death? Who decides morality, ethics, laws? All of these questions they have zero answers for. And they ended up rejecting God because they could not answer one question. And what happened? That resulted in a long series of even more difficult questions that they cannot answer. As for us, we can answer all of those other questions. Who created us? Why are we here? What is death? What is life after death? What is the purpose of life? What is ethics? What is morality? What is law? All of those questions we have foolproof answers to. But then in one area, Allah Azza wa Jalla has told us you won't fully understand. You're going to have to trust me. إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Nonetheless, even though there's no definitive answer, and by the way, another reason there's no definitive answer is because the human mind is circular. For every why, there's a why not, why not, why not. For every and, there's a because. For every if, there's a what if. Your mind will go in circles if you allow this door. And that's why Allah Azza wa Jalla gave the best answer to the angels. You're going to have to trust. إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Nonetheless, with that beginning answer, that there is no definitive answer, the Quran does give us certain wisdoms for the existence of pain and suffering. Okay? There's no definitive answer, but the Quran and Sunnah give us certain wisdom. Now, I have spoken about this topic in much more detail in advanced lectures and theology classes I give. Even in khutbahs, I've dealt upon it. Time is limited, so understand this is a small number of points from much more that I have said and taught in classes that I do. So, of the wisdoms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us about why there is pain and suffering is so that we reconnect with Allah and rediscover our religion and remind ourselves of a higher purpose, and that is the worship of Allah. You see, when life is good, when money is flowing, when food and drink are merry, then we kind of sort of forget about an akhirah. Our hearts become hard. And when we are pinched with an affliction or a calamity, what happens? We remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Guess what? That remembering of Allah, that is the wisdom of the pinching. That reconnecting with Allah, that's one of the reasons why there is pain and suffering. And Allah mentions this in the Quran. You know, all of us know the genre of verses. There are almost a dozen verses that Allah mentions when they're about to drown, when a calamity happens to them, when they're in an affliction. What happens? What's the next part? دَعَوُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They make dua to Allah sincerely, religion making it to Him. Then, when the calamity goes away, what happens? They forget. Now, pay attention to what I'm about to say. Allah never criticizes discovering Him at times of calamity. Allah criticizes forgetting Him after the calamity is over. Is that clear? Allah never criticizes anybody for discovering Him at times of pain and suffering. But Allah criticizes the forgetting after the pain and suffering go over. And in that connection with Allah is one of the wisdoms of that pain and suffering. Allah says in the Quran, فَلَوْلَا إِذْ جَاءَهُمْ بَأْسُنَا تَضَرَّعُوا وَلَكِنْ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Why didn't they reach out to us when the calamity reached them? Look at the rhetorical question. Why didn't they reach out to us when the calamity came to them? But their hearts became hard, so they forgot. So Allah wanted them to reach out to Him when the calamity came. Allah says in the Quran, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ إِن شَكَرْتُمْ وَآمَنْتُمْ. What will Allah gain by any type of adab, any type of punishment? What will Allah gain if you are thankful and believe in Him? Which means the purpose of the worldly adab, the purpose of a physical pain in this world is what? It's so that your spirituality awakens and reconnects with Allah. So Allah is saying, what will I gain by punishing you? If you are thankful and believe in me. Which means if you are not thankful and you don't believe, there will be something to be gained. If you forget about me, if you're ungrateful, then I need to remind you. And the pains of this world are nothing compared to the pains of next. So if the pain of this world will cause you to be saved from the pain of the next, guess what? It is definitely worth it. And that is of the greatest wisdom. And all of us understand this in a simple example of parents having to sometimes, if not discipline their children, maybe take them to the doctors for their flu shots, whatever. You have to inflict a small pain on the child that you love the most in order to avert a larger pain. If we can understand this, then to Allah belongs the perfect example. And here's another point. Let me ask you a simple question. Answer it in your head. Answer it in your head to yourself. Don't tell anybody else. It's personal things. I want to ask you, during your whole life, whether you're 20 years old, whether you're 80 years old, think about that one time that you were the closest with Allah. You felt the most spiritually aware. Your dua, your sajda, your salah was at a whole different level. And invariably, I will tell you that for the most of you in this room, if not all of you, it was during a time of great stress in your life. It was during a time when there was a calamity, where a loved one was close to death, financial crisis, marriage crisis. During that time, you discovered a new relationship with Allah that you never even knew existed. Guess what? That was the purpose of the calamity. To make you understand how beautiful it is to have a conversation with Allah. To make you realize there's nothing sweeter than to open your heart up to Allah and to form that personal bond with Him. That was an introduction to a level of spirituality that the goal of which was that you maintain some type of level after that calamity. That right there is the wisdom. Of the purposes of this pain and suffering as well is to remind us of our own mortality. To remind us we are not gods, we are creations of God. We are not all powerful, we are under the one who is Rabbul Alameen. And that's why falling sick reminds us of our mortality. Lying in bed, we appreciate that, okay, alhamdulillah, we don't have to do this every single day. And Allah says in the Quran, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. He created life and death, or death and life, to test you. Who amongst you is the best? This is of the wisdom. We're reminded of mortality. Of the wisdoms of pain and suffering as well, is that through that pain and suffering, we appreciate what otherwise we take for granted. Simplest example is health. The only time that most of us appreciate health is when we don't have it. SubhanAllah, one headache, a migraine, and we're knocked out on bed, and that's when we realize how beautiful life is without the migraine. So by a little bit of pain, the goal is to be thankful to Allah for all that we have. And this is of the wisdoms of pain and suffering. Of the wisdoms of pain and suffering as well, is that when there is calamity, when there is fitna, this causes us to react to the fitna. And in that reaction, we discover a higher purpose to life. Now, I'm going to get to one of my main points for today. One of the main purposes of evil is not the evil, but it is the good that must be generated to combat that evil. Allah does not love evil. Wallahu la yuhibbul fasad. Allah does not love evil. وَلَا يَرْضَى لِعِبَادِهِ الْكُفْرِ. Allah does not love evil. But what does He love? وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُتَّقِينَ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah loves those who are good. Now, simple question. And this really goes to the crux of today. How could we be kind to the refugees? How could we sponsor the orphans? How could we feed the poor if there were no poor and refugees and orphans to help? You see, in the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those pains and trials, they are meant to bring out the best, and in some people the worst. Yes, those are the ones that are going to be punished. But it's for us in this room, inshallah ta'ala, it's meant to bring out the best. And in bringing out the best, that's what Allah loves to see. He doesn't love the evil. He doesn't love the pain, but He loves to see the good that comes to counter that evil. And that good will only come when that evil is there. And this is of the biggest wisdoms. When we fight that evil, the best of us comes out. And when we counteract that, the pain, the suffering, we discover a purpose of our lives. SubhanAllah, how empty would life be, brothers and sisters? You know, we get tired of fundraisers, but I ask you for 1 second to just imagine there was no cause you'd ever give to. I swear to you, your soul would feel empty. Your soul would feel empty. You're not doing anything of value to society. You're not helping anybody. So yes, I understand it gets, it's fatigue, donor fatigue. I understand it gets tiring to give and give and give. But I want you to understand that in that giving, me and you, we have a higher purpose. And we feel that alhamdulillah, we're doing something. No matter how small it is, we feel that we are doing something positive, bringing a change in other people. And in that happiness is our happiness of the akhirah as well. Allah does not love the pain, but Allah loves the good that He sees in people to counteract that pain. And Allah loves to see people's lives change. How many and especially the volunteers of these organizations, how many I have met that were working in corporate America, making big salaries. And when they go to a field trip and they see what's going on, and they see the happiness when they feed an orphan, the joy when they bring a food package to a widow with her 3 children, and they say, and I've heard this with my own ears, and I know all of you in the organizations have heard this. They say, you know what? Corporate America cannot pay me the happiness I feel when I impact these people's lives. And they give up those lucrative careers, and they join NGOs or charities or any type of organization that will cause an impact in people. And guess what? Right there, that is the purpose and the wisdom of the purposes and wisdom of that pain and suffering. Now, somebody will say, okay, that explains for us in this room, in this air-conditioned hall, as we eat this banquet food, we write our nice fancy checks. How about those that are actually suffering? How about them? And to this we respond. One of the biggest problems of atheists and agnostics is that they only look at the equation up until death. The whole judgment of this dunya stops at death. And you will never be able to balance the equation without having something on the other side of the equal sign, which is after death. For us as Muslims, one of the fundamental differences that helps us appreciate the wisdom of pain and suffering is the blessings of the afterlife. We firmly believe, ilm al-yaqeen, we firmly believe that every pain, every calamity, in fact, our Prophet said, even a thorn that pricks you, even a thorn that pricks you, the rewards of that will be much more than the actual pain itself. And those that were patient, إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. Those that were patient will be given back without hisab. In a hadith, our Prophet ﷺ told us that when those who are suffering in this world, they come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and they see the rewards Allah has given them because they were patient, they will make a dua to Allah. They will say, "Oh Allah, allow us to come back to this dunya and inflict more pain on us so that we can see more of this reward on Judgment Day." Now you need to have that side of the equation to understand pain and suffering. But these people who deny God, they don't believe in an akhirah, do they? And so they keep on saying, "Oh, that baby died. That baby died. What is the crime of the baby?" And we say the baby didn't have a crime. And that is why on Judgment Day, as in the hadith, every single baby that dies and the parents were patient, that baby, Allah will say, "Go and enter Jannah." And the baby will say, "No, oh Allah, I will not enter Jannah until I hold on to my mother's hand and my father's hand and I drag them with me into Jannah." And Allah will then allow the parents to go because they lost their baby. Now you tell me, who's going to understand that unless you believe in it? You see, here's the point. You have to trust in Allah. There is wisdom that you don't understand, I don't understand. And by the way, this is a wisdom of the akhirah, right? But there's also wisdom in this dunya as well. And again, I don't have time, my talk is, the time is up, but the story of Khidr and Musa, I don't have time to go into it. The story of Khidr and Musa, go look it up if you don't know it. Surah Al-Kahf. 3 things happened. Every time Khidr does something, Musa's like, "Whoa, what did you just do, man? How could you do that? You just killed somebody. You just destroyed a ship. Why would you do that?" Musa did not understand. And Khidr said, "Just wait. There's a wisdom." And by the end of the story, we realize every one of those calamities was a blessing in disguise. Every one of those calamities was a blessing in disguise. And now I'm going to ask you another personal question. Don't answer it out loud, answer it in your head. I guarantee you, brothers and sisters, that when you look back to your life and you think of a disaster or calamity that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, at the time you're like, "Why is this happening? How could this happen?" But now, in hindsight, you understand that was such a blessing. You would not be here today, and I would not be here today if those calamities had not happened. If that door hadn't been shut and I had to take a short right turn or a left turn, then I would not be here today. If Allah had not closed one door in order to open another, then my path would not have led to where I am right now. This is what we learn from the story of Musa and Khidr, and this is one of the wisdoms of pain and suffering. So to conclude, brothers and sisters, time is limited, I know, it's late now. To conclude, it's very simple. When you believe in Allah Azza wa Jalla, then there is no such thing as pure evil. You see, we as Muslims, this is a theological point, by the way. It's a point of aqeedah, of theology of iman. We do not believe that Allah creates pure evil. How could He? He's Allah. Even shaitan, by the way, there's some wisdom and there's some good in fighting him. There is no such thing as pure evil. Rather, listen to this, and with this I'm done. For us, every pain, every suffering, every musibah is an opportunity to either rise up to Allah or to go down and distance ourselves from Him. Every single calamity, we have an opportunity. An opportunity to use the ladder and come closer to Allah. Such that when the calamity is over, in fact that calamity was a blessing because it boosted us up. Or, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, we seek Allah's refuge, we use that calamity to distance ourselves from Allah. And astaghfirullah, we go down. So, there is no such thing as pure evil. Rather, there is the potential to do good or the potential to fall worse into evil. And that's what our Prophet ﷺ said. And with this hadith I conclude. عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَإِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ. Amazing are the affairs of the believer, because the believer is always a winner. Memorize this. Our Prophet said, the believer is always a winner. The believer is never a loser. If something good happens, he thanks Allah, and Allah will give him more. And if something bad happens, he is patient, and Allah will reward him more for his patience. Never does the believer come out a loser. Every calamity and every trial is a means to come closer to Allah. It's a win-win for the believer. And here, right here and now, we are being tested with the opposite of the test of the Rohingya. The Rohingya don't have food, we have luxury food. The Rohingya don't have means to live, we have massive mansions as houses. The Rohingya are in civil war, we have peace in this land. The Rohingya don't have money, we have alhamdulillah money. Our tests are different than that of the Rohingya, that of the minorities. The test that we have, what are we doing with these blessings to help others? So to conclude, brothers and sisters, for how long will we continue to give? The response is very easy. For as long as you want to receive from Allah. We will give and give and give to every good cause, to your local masjid, to refugee sponsorship, to orphan sponsorship, to hungry people on the street, to the homeless, to women's shelters. We will give whatever Allah allows us to give. $1, $10, $100. We will give because we never get tired of receiving, do we? So we will continue to give because we want Allah to give us. We will give because in that giving is our life. We will give because in that giving we are counteracting that evil and discovering spirituality. We will give because that is the purpose of creation, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to see how much we give unto others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us to be of those who listen to the Quran and Sunnah and act to the best of it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us to be of those whose hearts are cleansed of any evil, who are guided to the straight path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our love of Allah and our love of the Messenger. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us to walk in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah cause us to live as Muslims, to die as mu'mins, and to be resurrected with the prophets and the companions. And what a noble companionship they are. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ وَبَرَكَاتُهُ.